The story of a nation is never simple, it's a tapestry woven with threads of gold and iron, of dreams and blood. It begins not with arrival, but with presence, with the vast, endless silence of a continent waiting. For millennia, the first peoples lived here, their lives written in the rivers, in the mountains, in the breath of the buffalo, a deep ancient connection to the land that understood time in seasons, not in centuries. They were the first custodians, the first Americans, their history a quiet epic. Then came the horizon, the edge of the world fractured by the sight of white sails. The arrival of the Europeans was an earthquake, a collision of civilizations that would forever change the shape of the globe. They came for gold, for glory, for God, driven by curiosity and a ruthless conviction of superiority. The Spanish brought conquest, the French brought trade, the English brought settlement. And with them they brought disease, a silent, terrifying weapon that decimated populations before a single shot was fired, a tragedy of scale we can barely comprehend. The early colonies were desperate, precarious settlements clinging to the edge of an untamed wilderness, a story of unbelievable hardship. Jamestown nearly starved, Massachusetts Bay shivered under puritanical zeal. They were running from old Europe's chains, seeking freedom, but creating new ones. They built their homes on stolen land, driven by a yearning for self-rule. But that yearning was deeply complicated, because the prosperity of the southern colonies was built on a dark and shameful foundation, the brutal, horrific trade of human beings. The contradiction of America was born right there in the soil, freedom for some, bondage for others. As the colonies grew rich and confident, they started to resent the tight grip of the mother country. Taxes, laws, restrictions they felt were unfair, distant, tyrannical. The air grew thick with revolutionary fervor. It wasn't just about tea or stamps, it was about identity, it was about destiny. The shot heard round the world, fired in Lexington, wasn't just a military action, it was an emotional declaration. A group of colonists standing up to the world's greatest empire, saying, we will govern ourselves, or we will die trying. They fought a grueling, impossible war, united by a radical idea, a single shining sentence. All men are created equal. That promise, that divine statement of equality, was immediately betrayed by the very men who wrote it. But it was a seed, a powerful seed planted in the heart of the nation, a truth that would eventually demand its fulfillment. The birth of the United States was a nervous, painful process. The Constitution, a brilliant compromise riddled with flaws, chief among them the compromise on slavery. They kicked the can down the road, they appeased the South, they valued unity over morality. And in doing so they signed a pact that guaranteed a future war. The 19th century was defined by expansion, a relentless, feverish push west. It was manifest destiny, the divine right to conquer the continent from sea to shining sea. This was a story of incredible tenacity, of pioneers pushing wagons over mountains, of railroads slicing through prairies, of discovery and invention. But it was also a story of merciless displacement, of treaties broken, of wars fought against the native tribes, a systematic erasure driven by greed and the endless hunger for land. We must remember the trail of tears, the forced marches, the desperate resistance, the land taken, the lives lost. Expansion was a triumph for settlers, but a catastrophe for the indigenous people. As the nation grew geographically, it fractured morally. The issue of slavery became a gaping wound that simply would not heal. It wasn't an abstract political debate. It was a raw, agonizing crisis of the soul. Can a nation dedicated to freedom truly survive half slave, half free? Lincoln answered with a resounding no. The Civil War was the nation's agonizing self-immolation, brother against brother, American against American, a bloody reckoning for the original sin of the Republic. It was the deadliest conflict in American history, a four-year baptism by fire that tested the very concept of the Union. The North fought to preserve the Union, the enslaved people fought for their freedom, their families, their very humanity. The Union won the war, the slaves were freed, but the peace was short, the wounds deep, and the promise of equality remained tragically unfulfilled. Reconstruction failed, giving way to Jim Crow, to terror, to decades of codified racial apartheid in the South, a new form of bondage cloaked in legality. The late 19th century was the era of the titans, the robber barons, the Gilded Age. Carnegie, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, they built industrial empires, transforming farms into factories, cities into towering canyons of steel and glass. This was a time of dizzying progress, of electric lights and telephones, but also a time of brutal labor practices, of poverty and exploitation of immigrants crammed into teeming, unsafe tenements. The gap between the impossibly rich and the hopelessly poor widened into a chasm. Then came the new century, the age of global power. Two world wars dragged a reluctant America onto the world stage, confirming its status as the world's industrial and military powerhouse. The victory in World War II was a defining moment, a triumph over fascism, but it immediately launched the country into a new kind of war, a long cold shadow of tension and fear against communism. The Cold War defined generations, shaping everything from foreign policy to school curricula, with the constant threat of nuclear annihilation hanging over every decision. Domestically, the post-war era was dominated by the civil rights movement, a fierce and righteous struggle to finally redeem that broken promise of equality from the Constitution. It was led by giants like Martin Luther King Jr., and countless brave, ordinary men, women, and children who marched, who sat, and who endured fire hoses and dogs to demand the basic right to vote, to learn to simply exist without fear. This was a moral revolution, a second civil war fought not with guns but with courage and conscience, that forever changed the social fabric of the nation. The late 20th century saw the nation grapple with disillusionment. Vietnam, Watergate, political assassinations — these events eroded the trust that the post-war generation had placed in its institutions, its leaders, its government. America entered an age of profound skepticism. Then came the digital revolution, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the brief shining moment when America stood alone as the sole superpower, a period of unquestioned global dominance. But history never sleeps, never rests. The 21st century began with a wound: the attack on September 11th, 2001, a stark, brutal reminder of vulnerability. It launched a new era of conflict, a global war on terror that reshaped foreign policy, created new divisions, and questioned the very definition of security and freedom. Today, America stands at a crossroads, defined by speed, by information, by deep tribal division. The story is no longer about conquering a continent, but about finding common ground within it. It's about identity, about justice, about whether the founding ideals can truly apply to all its citizens. It's about climate change, about global influence, about technology that connects us while often isolating us. The history of America is messy, contradictory, glorious, and tragic all at once. It's a constant struggle between its highest ideals and its cruelest actions, between the light of its promise and the shadow of its past. It is a story of continuous becoming, a nation